Hi, everybody. I'm Glenn Kennedy. This is my partner, Charles Mautz.
Hello, Glenn, and everybody out there.
Welcome back to Barn Talk. How you doing this morning, Charles?
Oh, we had a long, hot summer, but it's a great day today, isn't it?
It's a beautiful day.
Yeah,
Sure
boy,
is.
cool down.
So, Charles, I was we did a little segment at the Historical Society, and we really never got to finish. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that today.
Okay, yes.
And the first thing I'd like to discuss is during their early 1900s, I would say, 1905, 1906, somewhere in that general area, um, there was a geyser that
Oh,
sat at the
yes,
corner
yeah.
of 20 and Francisquito.
Mhm.
And it was, they tapped into one of our underground reservoirs. And I know you know a lot about this, Charles. Why don't you, what was the whole purpose of that?
Well, we finally got pumps in West Covina here that go down deep. And when we got into that geyser, there's a basin of water under there, and it was under such pressure. When they hit it, it just came up like Old Faithful, and they didn't know how to shut it off. It just ran and ran, and it was good water. Gosh, it was good water. And see, when they started getting the pumps to go deeper into the ground, they got into real fine water in the old reservoirs, and they were down pretty deep. But you water your cantaloupes, your cauliflower, any of your crops with that water, and it's kind of like making beer. It's in the water too.
So the vegetables were better and the crops were better with this
Fresh water, yeah.
with this fresh water. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yes, it makes
So
quite
if
a
it makes
difference.
that much difference,
Oh, big difference.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
You could take our cantaloupes. I very seldom have I cut open a cantaloupe today that was as sweet as the cantaloupes we grew here. And you can still grow them in your backyard but we don't have the water we used to have. That's the big secret. But we do have the soil, so that's another big secret.
Yeah.
Uh, you couldn't ask for anything better. If you took your crop, let's say a cantaloupe crop or a cauliflower crop, into the market in Los Angeles, and they knew it came from Merced, Sunset, anywhere in this area, the buyers walked over to you. You didn't have to go to the buyers.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
And mostly it was put on the high quality restaurants, and also a lot of it went on the ships for the cruises.
Okay.
And I remember not too long ago, the U.S. Rotterdam used to look for that was a ship that went from New York to Europe, and they would take about anything we produced. But by then it was bought up by other people before it got to New York. But it made a big difference. And I think the wells are 500 feet now and deeper to get into the good water.
Okay. So at that point, how far do they have to drill down?
We were down 150 feet.
150 feet.
Yeah.
And what was the normal well if you wanted just regular groundwater?
Oh, you could go 40 feet.
40 feet.
Yeah, 40 in those days. It's when we first started, the wells were not much deeper than 35 feet because they were suction pumps. So when the water level went down, you moved the whole well down, the whole pumping unit. And who wants to crawl into a well that's all bricked on the side down 20 feet because you had to lower your suction pump down? If you ever fell, well, that was the end of it.
That was the end of it. Okay.
They didn't search for you, I'll guarantee you. But yeah, it just flowed and flowed. You know, kind of like that oil well they hit in tap. They didn't know how to tap it either.
They didn't
It
have
just
how to turn it
flowed.
off, right?
It never shut off. So.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. So from there, we are also talking about the co-op in West Covina. Can you give us a quick rundown on that, Charles?
Okay. West Covina was a kind of a community without any income. The only income was property tax from the farmers and some few homes that were here. And I guess you'd say our founding fathers realized we couldn't go on like that. So they started looking around for different ways of taxing without hurting the people. That was their main concern, and keep the city up. And they realized that they could have a utility tax because they were buying electrical power from California Edison. And they also had another concern. California Edison was putting power lines right through cities without any thought of the cities. And they were afraid that they'd put one right down Glendora Avenue and split our city in two and run the power from dams and hydroelectric over to Whittier. And they thought, well, why can't they produce their own power and start a co-op, I guess you'd call it. And they looked into it, and we had all the natural gas in the world here. The main line ran down Valley Boulevard, and then they brought it right through Orange Avenue. But when they got to Merced, they turned it towards Baldwin Park, and they ran the other one right down Sunset, clear to Urbandale, probably. And Glendora had a big one. So they thought, well, why not put little power plants around and produce their own power? And then they'd have a utility tax to keep the city up, because see, we had no commercial use here. We had no industry, we had no shopping malls, we didn't have anything but little farmers, you know.
We still don't have any industry.
What?
We still don't have any industry.
We still don't have any industry.
Or very little.
Very little, and we still don't have what we should have.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
Because we're a nice city. And so I thought that was a good thought. And they started right after the First War. But the Depression came along, and they kind of, what could you do during the Depression? And then they got going again on it after that kind of cleared up. And then came the Second War, and that stopped it. And then they started again, and the Korean War started up. And by then, West Covina was booming in homes. So it was what they were going to do. Give you an idea, they would have a 5-member board on it. One would be from the city council, one would be from the school board, and the 3 would be elected at large. And they would oversee the management of the electrical company. And their job was to produce electricity by natural gas with these turbines. And they were going to have small ones all over the city. So if one went down, they could tap around and keep everybody in electricity, because you couldn't grow lettuce, cauliflower, your fine crops, and even walnuts at that time without water. And you had to have a very good, reliable, safe, very safe of water here, be able to pump it. And I think they were going to do a real good job at it, and that would then give the city an income. And then, if there was any money left over, if they produced the electricity reasonable, or they bought power from hydropower, at the end of the year, you get a refund check. And only could the members of West Covina be in on this. Other cities talked to them about it, but it was going to be for West Covina only. And I think it would have stayed small enough so it would be feasible. So many of them that returned from the war saw undergrounding done in Germany, France, and other areas. And I think it was all going to be underground. And it also, so many of the farmers were starting to switch over to natural gas. They take a gasoline engine and make it run off of natural gas. And that might have saved a little problems there later on. So I think it would have been a good thing. And I think we would have had a steady revenue. And, they were not going to sell stock. No stock was going to be sold, because they wanted the revenue to come back to the citizens that actually were buying the electricity but they were going to sell 20-year bonds, and they figured that would help get started.
So,
But
can I ask a question? So, the 20-year bonds, was that out to the public, or is that just in-house to the residents of West Covina?
both.
Both, okay.
Yeah.
And the majority stockholders would be all the farmers of West Covina?
If you had a meter, you were a stockholder.
You were a stockholder,
Yeah.
and then you got dividends at the end of the year?
That's
okay.
correct. And and I liked the way it was controlled by the
Okay.
So
what was the major setback? Okay, I understand the depression during the 30s. Nobody had any money, and then there was maybe a 3-year period, 38 to 40, 41, 42. Second World War broke out, and then the whole world changed. Then after the war, you had probably a 5-year through 46 through 51 before the Korean War. Why did nothing jump on that during that I could see after the Second World War? Why was it not done between the World War II and Korean War? They had enough time lapse in between there.
I just think there was a lot of pressure not to allow it to happen outside, but it just never got really rolling because the city was doing fairly well financially, and it just seemed like it just never got off the ground, you might say. And
let me ask you another question. Did some farmers do better than others?
Yes, some farmers did better.
Okay.
Now, yes, some did quite a bit better.
Okay.
And remember, we had farmers here that had 10 acres or 20 acres that had businesses elsewhere.
Okay, so this wasn't their primary source of income then?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we had quite a few of those, and we had quite a few that just thought it was easier to throw a switch than it was to have their own pump and go into it.
Okay.
And it was quite a bit of legal work, and I think it was just never really caught on to everybody. But I think it'd be a good thing now to have our own power company with our own revenue and staying right here in West Covina.
Well, like Pasadena has its own everything. It has its own health department, own water company, they are a self efficient city.
Yeah.
And Long Beach is the same way. And I don't know, we're never going to be the size of them, but they had their chance, and it just never happened.
Yeah, just never really got going. I don't think we had the population.
No, we did not have the population. Remember, during those times, there was no freeway. It was dark, and quiet, and scary.
Scary, yeah, yeah. West Covina,
during those times,
it was, yeah. And of course, Baldwin Park was happy, and Peony that's where you went shopping. Yeah. Both, Baldwin Park had a Safeway, had the streetcar with a flyer, Covina.
So there was no street lights. It was like country roads, right?
Country 2-lane roads, yeah.
So the street lights were where? Downtown Covina and Baldwin Park and La Puente?
That's correct. And there weren't many in Covina either, even time. Just
okay. So were the first street lights right there on Glendora Avenue?
Yes, they were on Glendora, and right down, I guess you say Orange and Sunset. There was no lights at all, just what a house would have. And West Covina was really out in the country, and of course you had Garvey, but who traveled there? It was a what was it, speed trap in Orange Grove. Yeah, and we couldn't keep writing tickets and making money. But I know it just didn't seem to get going, and I think it would have been a good thing, but maybe not. But a lot of pressure not to have it. I don't know.
Well, that's very, very interesting. Well, thank you for all that, Charles. And with that, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I'd like to say, let people know that we were a lovely community in West Covina. We were out in the country, and we had 3 cities around us. We had El Monte, Baldwin Park, Covina, and Peony, and that's where people went shopping.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Charles.
Well, I appreciate you asking too.
And with that, we'd like to say thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
I know.